Falk.
Here.
Commissioner Collar.
Here.
Commissioner Krazan.
Present.
Commissioner Bauer.
Here.
Commissioner Carlson.
Here.
And Commissioner Abelman.
Here.
For the record, Chair Callahan is out and Commissioner Abelman will be filling in as chair for tonight, but we do have a quorum and we can conduct business.
Excellent. I will ask Commissioner Falk to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Okay. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. All right, first, for the order of agenda, I believe there is a change.
Yes, I would like to make a recommendation to you all. Right now, we have 2 items slated for your review. The second item actually has some guest speakers, some guest presentations, and I'd like to, just in consideration of their time, move that one up. So essentially, take their item L1 and put it in front of J1.
No problem. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So carried. All right. Moving along, blue folder items, I do not believe we have
We
any.
do not.
Consent calendar, anyone have anything to exclude or pull? Does not seem like it, no. Okay, moving right along.
You do need to take a vote on that one.
Oh, yes, let's vote on that one. Motion to approve, where are we? Blue folder items, we don't have any consent calendar. Motion to, and so move to approve the consent calendar.
Motion to approve the
Second.
Excellent. All right, all in favor?
Aye.
All right, we're fumbling, but we're making it through, we're plugging along here.
Doing great, doing great.
All right, we're plugging along. Okay, next up, public participation on non-agenda items. This section is intended to provide members of the public with an opportunity to comment on any subject that does not appear on the agenda for action. This section is limited to 30 minutes. Each speaker will be afforded 3 minutes to address the commission. Each speaker will be permitted to speak only once. Written requests, if any, will be considered first under this section. So do we have any written? No. Anybody from the public wish to speak?
I think those are all our guests.
All right.
Anybody online or?
No e-comments and no one in Zoom.
All right. So where are we? I lost my place in my script. Okay. All right. So who wants to speak first?
Ex parte communication.
Ex parte, we did that, didn't we? I thought we did that.
So we
Okay,
do have a
very-
public hearing item tonight, so this would be the opportunity to discuss who you had conversations with, whether it be the applicant, staff, anybody else.
None. All right. Excellent.
I just asked Greg before the meeting who occupies the location that we're talking about. That was my only.
It was the extent.
I talked to Craig Stanton, the manager in the area, in that office.
Great.
All right. All right. So just moving right along then. Thank you for sharing those. Next item, public hearings. Actually, we're moving that to now it's going to be L1, correct? All right, items for discussion prior to action. Receive and file a presentation from the Los Angeles County Department of Beaches and Harbors regarding their Living Shoreline project.
Great. Yeah, we have a couple guests. We have Amiko Eanes, a planner and a project manager for this project by LA County Beaches and Harbor. She brought with her Chris Webb from Moffett and Nickel. They're going to walk you through this future project and field any questions that you guys may have. Take it away.
All right. Well, it came quicker than I thought it would be. So good evening, commissioners. My name is Emiko Innes. I am a coastal resilience project manager for the LA County Department of Beaches and Harbors. And I apologize in advance. I just came back from Japan, so I'm pretty jet lagged. If I'm not talking very good, that's why. So, and this is why I have Chris Webb, who can help me answering your hard questions. Okay, so thank you very much for this opportunity to share the county's coastal resilience efforts and project that is located in your city. Next slide, please. So first, I will go over the Living Shoreline demonstration project. And after that, I will talk about the regional planning efforts that we just started last month. In our coastal resilience study in 2023, we identified 3 beach locations to demonstrate the nature-based solutions to increase resilience to present and future coastal hazards and preserve and enhance equitable public access to county beaches. And Redondo Beach was one of 3 locations that we selected for this through the study. Next slide. So you know the site. This is our project site. The left-hand side is King Harbor, and in the middle is Redondo Beach Pier. A project area is located in between the pier and topaz growing. Around this area, sediment tends to move from south to north. And the beach has been renourished twice, last one being 2012. But now the beach is pretty narrow now, and it's time to renourish. We were originally thinking about installing a sediment retention device underneath the pier. It's a growing. But our analysis has shown that not much sand is migrating to north of the pier. So we've abandoned that idea. And now the selected project does not include the growing. We found that most of the sediment on the beach is ending up on that Redondo submarine canyon that's located very close to the beach. Next slide. So this is a selected project. Yellow area is going to be the beach nourishment area where we're placing 300,000 cubic yard of beach quality sand. This will make the beach width 90 feet wider than current condition. We will also add a 0.5 acre of dune habitat, is that purple area there. The project will cost about $27 million, and with a recreational value of $202 million over 20 years. And the benefit cost ratio is 7.5, which is very high and a good investment. Next slide, please. So right now we are completing the feasibility study. This will finish next month, July 2025. And then the next phase will be include preliminary engineering and design, and environmental review and permitting. Will also include graphic design that would have a good looking educational signages and public outreach materials. We are also coordinating with the Army Corps of Engineers on the next cycle of the Marina del Rey maintenance dredging project to leverage on a beneficial reuse program. So if we are successful, the federal government will pay for the dredging and transporting of the Marina del Rey harbor sediment to this project. And that would lower the overall project cost. Next slide. So now a big picture on the county's Coastal Resilience Initiative. Our goal for this initiative is to protect public beaches and access from erosion caused by storms and sea level rise. I just talked about the Living Shoreline Demonstration Project. This is to implement the nature-based solution at the 3 project sites. And the Sand Compatibility and Opportunistic Use Program, or SCOOP, this will establish 5 pre-approved sites for relatively small beach nourishment projects using opportunistically available sand sources, such as those generated from upland land development projects and flood control maintenance operations. Redondo Beach is one of those 5 pre-approved sites. So when we established this program and when someone come up with extra sand, for example, from a construction site, then the Redondo Beach will be able to receive that sand. So the program will be ready and ready to go around mid-2026. That's next year. And lastly, the LA County Regional Coastal Strategic Adaptation Plan. This will develop a regional coalition of stakeholders and prepare a strategic plan to facilitate the implementation of regional shoreline management activities for the LA County coast, starting from Rio Carrillo Beach to the north and ending at the Torrance Beach to the south. And we just had the first workshop in May with the coastal jurisdictions, including City of Redondo Beach, to discuss coalition structures to prepare a master plan to manage sand on the beach. And in that meeting, we heard from city staff that there are sediment accumulations within the King Harbor, and part of this plan can address maybe balancing the act of sand accumulation in one spot and then the place where you need to place sand, and both places will benefit. So that's the idea on this strategic adaptation plan. So that's going to happen up and down the coast in LA County. Next slide, please. So this is my last slide. Thank you very much for your time. Are there any questions?
Yeah, thanks. Thanks for coming. Thanks for your time. I certainly recognize that this is an important beach to the city, an important beach to the county. There's great public access. You can get to it by bus. There's always parking in the pier. It's a heavily used beach. The park next to it's heavily used. You may not be aware that we just went through a dredging program in the harbor.
Yes.
So you said in your presentation, sediment tends to move from south to north. That's probably because of the canyon and all the stonework in the harbor area. Generally, globally, what I see, what maybe we see, is sand moves from the north to the south, hits the break wall, and that really stops the migration. So if there were no harbor here at all, we'd probably have a certain amount of sand and beach here, but with the canyon there, we lose sand into the canyon. We see sand coming from south to north and getting pumped through the break wall. We have a porous break wall. So we had a beach inside the break wall, which at low tide, you could walk half a mile. You could walk halfway down the harbor, inside the harbor. And it migrates all the way down the break wall and even gets pumped in at the south end. So we see sand getting pumped into the south channel to the south basin inside of the south break wall. I'm sorry, I could show you a map, but what I'm trying to say is we see sand getting pumped from south to north, all the way to the south end of the break wall, into the south end of the harbor. So even that south channel in the harbor and the hand launch all at the south end had to be dredged. So that's my first comment. We see sand coming from south to north, and preserving this beach with all the stonework around it and the canyon right there is tough. When we went through the dredging project, the Army Corps and all our experts said, boy, you're picking up all this valuable sand. What should we do with it? Should we put it on the beach? At the time, just a few years ago, everyone told us no. Everyone told us this beach was stable. So, and even county people said to us, hey, we do measurements every month. We've replenished it, and it goes back to this level, and it's probably always going to be at this level. You're fighting the canyon. You're fighting a 1,000-foot underwater Grand Canyon, and you just can't hold the sand there. So, I'm wondering if you're aware that we did a dredging project here and have sand available locally. There's sand off Topaz Jetty, which could be put here if desirable.
Yes.
And then the second thing I'd like to ask is, have you seen that county data, or can you show us that county data, which says whether or not this beach is stable? Because we were told very recently it was stable.
Yes. So it is in our feasibility study report, and it does show increasing trend over time in the last 20, 25 years because the beach went through 2 beach nourishment activities. So every time you put some sand on the beach, there's increase in width temporarily, and then it fizzles down. And then another time you add more sand, it fizzles down. But then if you look at the beach width over time, the width is increasing. That means the beach nourishment activities are working. So now this time we want to add double the volume of sediment onto this beach so that it will last for at least 20 years to get to the width that we have now.
We've also done studies in the harbor, I think it was Noble and Associates, which shows the whole area has subsided several inches due to oil drilling and oil extraction. So, we've got the canyon, we've got sea level rise, and we've got the land itself has settled. It seems like we're fighting a very tough losing battle here.
Yep.
Another comment I'd like to make is you mentioned Marina Del Rey and the dredging there as a possible source. Please no. Please, please, please no. When that was done in 2012, he'll tell you this. This is a heavily dove scuba diving area. And when that sand got dumped here, that sand was mostly plastic. It was mostly trash. And we don't want that here again. Part of the reason I'm on this commission is to prevent that from ever happening again. And please don't bring that filthy Marina Del Rey sand from Bologna Creek down here. Please don't. It doesn't belong in the ocean. It doesn't belong at a dive site. It doesn't even belong on this heavily used beach. It's just too much trash. So this project makes me really nervous that we have a sensitive offshore site, a sensitive underwater habitat, a really unique habitat with the canyon this close to the ocean. You'll be impacting scuba divers, which the Coastal Commission won't like, which I won't like, which my compatriot Lee Collar won't like. And especially if you bring dirty sand down here, no one on the beach will like it either. So I'm very reluctant to be excited about this project where we're just, basically throwing sand in a hole, and the hole itself is a valuable ecological and recreational area. Thanks. No other questions.
Just to respond to your comments on the dirty sand from Marina Del Rey Harbor. So in 2012, I heard about the incident where there are a lot of trash in the sediment. But since then, during the last dredging activity in last year, we've bumped up the monitoring program during the dredging, and then after the placing the sand near shore of Dockweiler. And we did not detect any noticeable increase in trash in those areas. So I think we've had a bunch of lesson learned from 2012 activity. And we completely agree that, plastic trash and sediment that's going to be used for beach nourishment, that's not acceptable. So we do have a standard to meet for beach nourishment activities. So you can be assured that we were only using the beach quality sand. and none of the trash will make it to the beach.
What about DDT and PCP?
So we do a chemical testing of the sediment. These sediments are coming from the harbor mouth. So it has a very good circulation, and the sand is accumulated. It's coming from outside of the harbor. We're not dredging from the inside of the harbor, like those individual basins. So those sand is very clean.
That's where the sand came from last time, and it had a lot of
Yeah.
plastic, which came out of Bologna Creek, and chemicals would come from there as well.
Yep.
Thanks.
Commissioner Bauer.
No, Roger already covered mine. There's quite a bit of DDT in the sand that was dumped out of our dredging, so I don't know if you test for that, but I think it was, you're not going to be using that sand, but yeah.
Thanks for the presentation. You said doubling, the 90-foot was doubling. That's doubling the current width or doubling the replenishment that was we did 45 feet last time, or?
Doubling the volume of sand, excuse me, that we are adding to the beach. So last time it was around 100 to 150,000 cubic yard that was added to the beach. We're adding 300,000 cubic yard this time.
Okay. And then you said you're doing the environmental impact study now? Or,
That would be the next phase.
oh, next phase.
Yeah.
So does that include experts, biologists, ocean folks that know the canyon or know those environments?
Yes.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Okay. Yeah, I guess, and then the nature-based solution, meaning you're using sand versus a wall or some man-made structure?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I'm familiar with these types of replenishments from, grew up back east, but yeah, it is concerning with the canyon being so close and that it's a losing battle. I do see even infrastructure, shown in this photo that's taken a beating because it's high tide and it comes so close now that it probably takes more upkeep, and it's such a popular beach. But I am worried about the environment, and then just a little puzzled how, like Roger said, how the story was different 2 years ago. So only other question I had was, is the filtering standard published somewhere publicly
Filtering.
of the sand that you said you screen and filter the sand before it's placed? Is there, and there's a standard, is that a publicly published standard?
Commissioner Sharzan, my name is Chris Webb. I work with Moffitt and Nichols, so I just need to understand the question a little bit better. Are you referring to sand that would come out of Marina Del Rey or another sand source?
I guess any. I'm just wondering, even just the dredging we did here, is not apparent, boating by, what method is being used to screen? Is it visual? Is it filters? Is it some micron size?
Typically, it's
Or microplastics? Like how do you do it?
for material that's brought in from the water. Typically, it's not filtered. It's not sieved. It's not separated. If it's coming from upland, like
Construction site?
yeah, or a debris basin or something like that, typically it is screened at that site because oftentimes there'll be rock, there'll be trash, there'll be debris, tires, whatever, and then that all needs to come out of the material to have it to be earthen material that's coming down to the beach, sand. When it comes from offshore, typically it comes from a large sandy area that was former seabed during prior geologic time, and it formed a beach, relic beaches they're called, and sometimes they're at the mouth, near the mouths of coastal streams, which form deltas and things like that. So what we try to do is find sand reservoirs that are really thick layers of sand as far down as you can investigate. And typically what we'll do is, if the seabed is a depth of 50 feet deep, we'll look 20 feet below that. So we'll have a vibracore, which is basically a small, like 4-inch diameter
thing that gets vibrated into the seabed, pulls up a physical sample that's 20 feet long. They lay it down on the boat, they open it up, they being the crew and some engineers that are on the boat involved with the project, and will visually inspect the core, then take samples every 2.5 feet, bag them, mark them, send them to a lab for grain size and chemistry. The grain size is important to understand how well does it match the beach. The chemistry is important for everything you've already talked about. And typically, what we're trying to do is find material that's coming from an offshore deposit like I'm describing. And the closest one to you, you mentioned, Sir, Commissioner Carlson, thank you. You mentioned off of Topaz, there's a bar or a deposit. I'm not familiar with that, although I've heard about it, so I don't know the character of it, but I'd love to learn more. And
It's where the dredging was just put, and I apologize, but it makes it seem like you guys haven't done your homework.
and that would be the case under certain circumstances. That's not the case here. We are aware that the Corps places material in an offshore depression off of Redondo when they dredge other places, and it's kind of a borrow site that can be taken out again. So we're aware of that. But what I don't know is the quality of the material that's in it. So what our heads have done in planning this thing is we've been looking at some sites that were investigated off of Los Angeles International Airport in, 2012 probably, by the firm, the coastal engineering firm that's leading this study. We're a sub-consultant to them. We're a coastal engineering firm as well. But these folks went out and did these vibrocores off the airport in this water depth, and they found really high quality sand, meaning sand that is of the right grain size to go on this beach, and it's a little coarser. So what we're trying to find is sand that matches the beach, but is a little coarser in grain size so that its propensity is to stay up on the beach longer and to result in a wider beach that is longer lived. Because the waves will come up and get it at high tide, like the photograph that was referred to by Commissioner Charzan, and they'll rework the profile. After the beach sand is placed in the envelope that was shown in the graphic, there was a cross section that showed the beach would get a certain amount wider, 90 feet, doubled or whatever it was. Mother Nature starts to work on that, and Mother Nature will pull it off, pull it into slightly deeper water, and she'll flatten that profile to where it's wider but flatter and extends, the toe extends farther out closer to the canyon. What we believe is the case is the canyon, of course, is there. Yeah, we certainly have to be aware of that. The last thing that the county wants to do is basically feed the canyon, right? Like you've already talked about. So the idea is to have the project sit higher than that and shoreward toward shore from the canyon and stay longer in that position and not move away as fast. So we're trying to find coarser grain size material. The sand that's on these beaches is typically about 1/4 of a millimeter in diameter, 0.25 millimeters. So what we try to find is sand that's about 1/2 millimeter in diameter. And it looks different. It's beautiful though. It's typically a slightly different color. You can see it, you can track it with your eyes. And we've done this in other places. That's what this, and I don't mean to belabor this point. If I am, you can stop me. If I've answered the question.
That's great.
Sorry. But the most recent projects that were done were in the San Diego region, and they were done by a regional group called the San Diego Association of Governments, and their acronym is SANDAG, S-A-N-D-A-G. So this is kind of a model of what they did. And they investigated offshore borrow sites. We were privileged to be on the consulting team for that and found these offshore borrow sites, we call them, that are similar to what I've described off of Los Angeles International Airport. Send a dredge out, the kind of dredge that will basically kind of vacuum clean the bottom, the seabed where these borrow sites are, take about a 3-foot cut, 2 to 3 feet. They'll cut it and it'll get sucked up into the hull of the dredge through these arms that it drags. And the dredge fills its hull, stops dredging, brings the arms up, turns and then comes to the source location, which in this case is right off of Redondo, anchor, hooked to a hose. There's typically a pipeline that's on the beach and that does a 90-degree turn and goes offshore and is hooked to a buoy, and the dredge will hook up to that line and pump from its hull through that line up onto the beach. And it'll hold about somewhere between 3,000 to 5,000 cubic yards at a time. So it'll pump that off in about an hour. And then it'll stop its operation, disconnect the hose, pull its anchor up and go get some more. So it takes about, for a 300,000 cubic yard project total, it can do 10,000 to 20,000 cubic yards in a day. So it could do the project in a month. Anyway, to answer your question, they don't sieve it when it comes in from the ocean because typically there's nothing in it. It is sand. I will tell you that for that San Diego project, they have an archaeologist, this is fascinating, standing there by the end of the pipe watching it the whole time. And we used to kind of make fun of that guy and think, what's that guy doing? He's gonna get a sunburn standing there, nothing going on. There were these Indian grinding bowls that came flying out of the pipe. They were pretty sizable, matates. So in San Diego County, they had that going on. The same kind of thing might happen here because relic sea stands were when there were people actually living out there and doing that kind of thing. So there are things that can come through the pipe. Typically there'll be sometimes there'll be a dead fish or so that'll come through. It's not like it's filled with other things. It's typically just filled with sand, and that's what you see and that's what you get. So that's the intent of the project. The Maria del Rey sand is an interesting concept. I really haven't had a chance to talk much about it with anybody, so I don't know the quality. From what I'm understanding, it's closer to the ocean, so it should be more pure sand as opposed to inner harbor, but I don't know, Commissioner Carlson, what you experienced and where that came from. I'd love to know more, because I know one thing, nobody on this end wants to be associated with that. Nobody. So we certainly don't want that to be our legacy with you and Redondo. What we're trying to do with Redondo is provide an opportunity for a more resilient piece of shoreline between the pier and Topaz Groin that will buy more time for sea level rise to, work its way seaward, raise water levels up. And then what the sandy beach can do, which is the beauty of a sandy beach, is a sandy beach can shift with that rising sea level gradually. And it will rise and retreat landward. So your whole level beach will actually rise up and back up. So if you provide enough width, it just provides you more time to make other decisions and understand your planning or your future scenarios that you might have to be facing with regards to infrastructure, the threats of infrastructure. How can you protect that? And if you add to it, back at the back of the beach, a living shoreline, which is a sand dune, and typically they're higher and they're mounded and there's vegetation growing on them. Those things can grow large and they can attract sand that blows across the beach on a windy day and store it there. It prevents and reduces the amount of sand that gets on the bike path, parking lots, et cetera, on landward infrastructure where you don't want it, and it becomes a nuisance. And it provides a reservoir of sand for the storm. What we'd like to see is when the big one hits, I don't think we've seen a 100-year storm in my lifetime, but maybe we will. So if we see a 100-year storm, we'd like to have enough buffer to absorb that energy and prevent it from overwashing everything and damaging a bunch of stuff. And maybe it'll still happen, but it'll be less because you will have taken action to try to prevent it. There's no intention to feed the canyon. We understand the proximity. We'd like to get sand that stays close. Our first idea was to try to put a structure along the pier, a groin, which they have at Seal Beach Pier, and that was just, that's a good idea. It holds a beach at Seal Beach. So we put that on paper and floated the idea, but it wasn't something that was gonna go forward. So we're trying, and we're open to other ideas. Please offer them. If you've got some thoughts of how to keep it from going into that harbor, we understand because we see it in aerial photographs, we know that's where it goes. We'd like to kind of keep that from happening. We wanted to make a compartment where you can almost hold the sand and have it advance as far as you want seaward, make this big sandbox, literally. So your input is super valuable, and we'd love to hear more. So feel free to continue with more questions. We'd love to hear them.
Thanks so much. The dune, though, in this case is just a restoration of an area above a concrete wall, right? I mean, our whole...
It's on the beach, against the back of the beach, behind Topaz Groin, and it's intended to be along the boardwalk on the beach side.
Which is all a big, tall brick wall right now.
Okay.
And
So we
then
would be-
there's dune.
So it would be right along that brick wall. So we'd have to be a little careful so it doesn't
I see.
cause an issue with the wall, destabilize the wall. We don't want that. I don't know how well it's founded. We could figure that out.
So I appreciate what you said, and what I got, the big point I got from what you said was the reason it makes sense for the county to put all this money in is simply the larger grain size of sand
Yeah,
gives it more longevity.
yeah, it does.
Okay.
It makes a difference. It's called it's called the quality, sand quality. And that's related to grain size. You know, you want stuff that looks like your beach, is at least as coarse as your beach, maybe a little coarser. You don't want to change the character of it so much, though, that people don't like it, because people are used to a certain thing around here, right? I know I am. And I want to make sure that it's not challenging for people to lay on, super hot, whatever it might be the case, tracks off the beach on their feet and ends up filling their cars and stuff like that. So we could bring you samples. I mean, there's going to be an offshore investigation at some point with samples, and we could bring you physical samples and say, this is the stuff. And you could look at it, and you could almost say, we like that, but not that. And maybe that's a different part of the offshore source location. You know, I mean, these source locations are long. They're not terribly wide because you got to have them within a certain water depth because you want to be outside of the area of sand transport. You don't want to dig a hole so the sand that's moving along coast naturally falls into the hole. That's bad. That'd be robbing the beach. So you want to be outside of what they call the depth of closure. The depth of closure is where your beach profile ends. Your beach profile is your slope. Sand moves up the slope in the summer and then down the slope in the winter, builds a bar, and then moves back up in the summer, right? So there's an area where that doesn't happen anymore. The sand movement shoreward and seaward stops. We want to be outside of that, which is about 30 feet typically. And then we want to be shallower than 50 feet or 60 because the dredge is limited in how deep it can go. So there's a band that we work with that's in the 50 to 55 foot depth contour. And then it runs lateral, you know, like a ribbon along the coast. And in this instance, we felt it went from Venice Beach basically down to Manhattan Beach, it appeared. We just happened to find sand right off the airport, right off Venice and right off Manhattan, and it was the same stuff. So connecting the dots tells me that it's probably along that whole length of coast. And so there might be a lot of sand out there, a lot of sand that is plenty to do this job and many others. So.
Thanks.
All right, to just follow on what Commissioner Carlson said, as a diver back in 2012, I was actually diving off of Veterans Park when they did the dredging project up in Marina Del Rey. They dumped the sand in the water and then they pumped it onto the beach. In the process of dumping the sand, all the little bits of plastic that were in the sand, of course, floated away and floated a little bit north to our dive site. And it was basically covered with smallish pieces of plastic. It's not like these were 2-liter Coke bottles that you could filter out with a reasonable size screen. This was basically small pieces of somewhat deteriorated plastic bags and things like that. In fact, I encourage you, if you go on YouTube and search for the trashing of Veterans Park, it's like a 4-minute video. It actually documents that. And so I would echo my fellow commissioner here that if wherever you get the sand from, don't get it from the end of Bayona Creek and Marina Del Rey.
Commissioner Collier, could we ask you to repeat the name of that video?
It's called The Trashing of Veterans Park.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
We will watch that.
Yeah, it's 4 minutes and 2 seconds, so it won't take you too long.
Okay. The debris tends to collect in depressions and it goes right toward the canyon, probably. We dove Magoo Canyon and you knew where you were when the canyon was there because basically not only would you just dive down the slope, but there was shoes and dolls and balls and all sorts of stuff. So it was like the collection point for everything.
So I had a question about the dune restoration. I don't know if you have engaged with South Bay Parkland Conservancy or not, but they have been doing the Esplanade Bluff restoration. project. So it might be good for you to contact them and find out what they've been doing in restoring the further south parts along the beach there. Your area might be something that they could easily help you continue what they've been doing.
Okay. We will contact them. What was the name again?
South Bay Parkland Conservancy. And if you go to their website, you can check their Esplanade Bluff project.
Okay. We have been engaged with the Bay Foundation. They've done a couple of dune restoration like this. Also, USCC grant, academia staff, they've been very helpful in providing us with comments too.
Yeah, their plan was with the California Coastal Conservancy and Santa Monica Bay Restoration Commission using funds from California Proposition 12 and a grant from the city to restore the bluffs to original native habitat, and especially to provide an expansion of habitat for the El Segundo blue butterfly.
Okay, thank you.
So I'm a diver as well, so I echo their concerns. I guess my question is, and this isn't about distrust or anything like that, but in the event that there is a situation where there is a bunch of particulate in the sand, what happens next?
Wow. That's, Commissioner Abelman, that is a difficult thing to address. I think the answer to that is not put yourself in that situation. I think there would, and I think there's a way to not put ourselves in that situation. And the way is this, that there's a protocol we have to follow for every project to determine whether the sand is compatible. And it's called the Southern California Dredge Material Management Team, otherwise known as the DMMT. And the DMMT is a group of agency staff, all the agencies, meaning the Corps, the EPA, Water Board, Coastal Commission, State Lands Commission, who am I forgetting? U.S. Fish and Wildlife, National Marine Fisheries, everybody. It's a big crowd. And they meet at downtown LA once a month. It's the last Thursday of the month. And what a project is required to go through is it has to go through the gauntlet of the DMMT, their screening. So we have to put together what's called a sampling and analysis plan. And that means, what are you going to do in your investigation? Why are you going to go out to that site? And what makes you think it's so good? Show some data that suggests it is. And then what are you going to do out there with your probes, your borings? And then once you pull them up, what do you do to analyze them? Then once they have to approve that sampling and analysis plan. And if there's any sort of tendency for it to have stuff in it like trash, they will call it out and they'll say, well, you probably should be having a trash analysis component to this plan. Okay. For projects that don't have the propensity for that, they basically require you to do grain size testing and chemistry testing of a suite of chemicals called bulk chemistry, which means they're all tested in bulk. You don't get a break on the price for it, but nonetheless, it's like 50 different things. And if there's a hit in any of them, then you got to drill down deeper into that. And there's thresholds that we have to look at and compare the chemistry test results with, and they're put together by National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, their guidelines, and it's real easy to understand whether you've exceeded a threshold or not. It's because it's numeric and it's quantitative, and our test results are apples to apples comparison. So once we get the test results and compile them and look at it and caucus and then write a report, we have to present that to the DMMT. And this is all in person or virtual, but I mean, it's like, we have to get up in front of the group and say, this is what we did, and this is the material results were. And they get to weigh in. And they can say no. And if it's got debris in it, they probably would say no. They probably would discourage us from going to a place like that. You got to get through them first to even go out and do your sampling. So the good news is there's guardrails on this thing that'll keep the county in the right lane. And I think there's some reassurance there. And you can attend those meetings, by the way. They're open to the public. And we can even forward you the invitation. When it comes to the county having to go in front of them, because you're a receiving beach, my gosh, you're a interested, vested partner. You could listen in and see what they have to say and what they have to ask, and you can ask your own questions. It's a transparent process.
Okay, so, and you may have mentioned this before, and if you did, I apologize, because there's been a lot of information. Of this 28 million, is there a cost for sand?
Yeah.
What is the sand cost?
It's-
And if
it's-
so, I'm sorry, if so, does sand cost different in different places, or is it just a general cost for sand?
It's all over the place. It depends on how far away you are from where it exists, where you're taking it from.
So is that a transportation cost then, or is
Yep.
that the
It's two things.
the grain doesn't cost any different, but the
No.
transportation?
Correct. It's the transportation to go get it and the labor to go get it. And it's also the type of dredge that goes to get it. And here's the trick. And this has been a sore point for Southern California for a while. Southern California, for this kind of project, you need a dredge that's got a name called the hopper dredge. And the hopper dredge is the one I described to you that moves over a dredge site, sucks in the material from the bed and puts it in the hull, stores it in the hull, and then comes to the site and pumps it off. That's a hopper dredge. It is a big container, basically. Those don't sit on the West Coast. Those work on the East Coast and the Gulf Coast. So they're all over the United States, Gulf and Gulf and East Coast. But to get them here, they have to come from the East Coast, which means they have to come through the Panama Canal. That's a $10 to $15 million cost right there. So the mobilization for a hopper dredge almost makes it prohibitive. But they do come over here once in a while. And what we try to do is line up the project to occur at a time to where that hopper dredge has come here for something else. And they come to dredge the mouth of the Columbia River in Oregon. That's what they come here every couple of years for that. And if we can line this up to where they're here anyway and cozy up to them and make them aware, this is your next project if you want it. And once you're done with that, let's talk, and they'll jump all over it. So we're going to try to time it to where it's fortuitous. The other kind of dredge that's good for these, however, it's a little harder to do in the open ocean, is a cutterhead suction dredge. Maybe you're familiar with that, a hydraulic cutterhead suction dredge that sits in place, doesn't move, and has a thing that goes like a snout that goes off of the front end of it, the bow, and goes down and drills into the seafloor and sucks material up through the pipe. The material goes into the dredge, through the dredge actually, and the dredge is a big giant pump, and it just goes out the back end through a pipe, and that pipe goes up onto your beach. They do that off of North Orange County every decade or so at a place called Surfside Colony Sunset Beach, which is intended to feed North Orange County, a 15-mile coastline with sand, and it has worked absolutely magnificently, and I'm shocked. But the problem is, this dredge is not as seaworthy as the hopper. So if rough seas come up, it's got to scoot into a harbor. Well, you got one. It needs to function near a harbor entrance to escape into a safe zone. So you have the opportunity to not just rely on a hopper dredge, but you could potentially rely on a cutterhead suction. The problem is that cutterhead suction won't anchor off of LA Airport and dredge and pipe it all the way down, see? So if the borrow site is right off of your shore, which it is in North Orange County, then you're gold. And if that storage stockpile, underwater stockpile, had good sand in it, that would be great. And maybe it does, I don't know. Maybe we should go out there and check it and see what's out there, because that will, okay, so the cost to use a cutterhead suction that sits in place and pumps is about half the price of the cost to do a hopper dredge. The hopper dredges are more expensive because they have to go farther, they burn fuel, they do emit air emissions, they have to meet California standards, so they got to retrofit their stuff when they come from the East Coast. Over here, it's like a whole different world for them, and it costs them a lot of money to do it, so they pass it right on. So I'll get to the point. The cost to do a project per cubic yard can be on the order of $15 to $20 per cubic yard if it's the cutterhead suction style. But if it's the hopper style, it's at least double that. It's probably in the $40 zone. It might be high 30s, low 40s, creeping up into the 50s.
So does this 28 million contemplate which?
Well, I assumed about 50% of that was for the cost of the sand.
Okay.
That the sand was on the order of, I was
Cost of the
assuming,
labor of the sand. The sand itself, the grains are free.
yep, grains are free.
Okay, so there's no, the reason why I ask, because I want to make sure that there's no incentive for somebody to get rid of their junky sand and pass it along, or there's an incentive for someone to do some cost savings and get less expensive sand. But you're telling me that isn't an issue?
No, not that I'm aware of, no. No, the actual mineral sand is free. But going and getting it and delivering it costs the money.
Okay.
That's where the money's in. We always build a contingency on these costs too, and it's a pretty high one. It's a 25% contingency. So that's, 1/4 of your project is contingency. We've done this before. Contingency is for unknowns. If you've never done it before, your contingency should be pretty high. If you've done it before, it can be lower. We've done this before. We know how to do it. So the contingency is high right now, and it'll go down as the project advances forward. The contingency drops as you learn more and more and more and define your project better. So that's another thing to be aware of.
Yes, Roger.
So, I apologize for having kind of some hostile questions at first.
Okay.
I genuinely like this beach, and I genuinely like this city, and I want to see this beach preserved. So I would genuinely like to apologize again and work with you to make this project as good as it can be. It still makes me a little nervous that we heard a different story. I think I'm the oldest one, or oldest. Yeah, I think I'm the longest serving. I apologize. I still get nervous in front of a microphone. I think I'm the longest serving member here, and we've been in front of the DMMT and dredging
Okay.
and Army Corps
You're familiar with that.
for at least as long as I've been here. I've been here 6 or 7 years, I think. And I'm sorry, but we consistently heard a different story from them. On the quality of sand, we were told similar things, and then what eventually went out to the contractor was, let's use best practices. And we kind of got a pat on the head. We never were invited to a meeting, and now this sand was going offshore, but the screening that was done to it was basically, a grading a foot or two wide. Like it would catch a truck tire. It wouldn't catch,
Right.
anything made by, the Chumash. So, and I also see, very large grain sand here already. The sand in the surf line, I'm sure you've poured it out of your booties. It's a millimeter. My best idea at this point to protect the area is, instead of a huge project every 20 years, is a small project every year or two. How many cubic feet or cubic yards of sand do you think this project would be?
Well, we said 300,000 was our suggested amount to fill this thing up.
We just pulled, 60,000-ish out of the harbor? So there could be 60,000 sitting offshore.
Okay.
We still have too much sand in the harbor. They didn't get it all.
Okay.
So we essentially have a source of large grain sand in our harbor.
Boy.
And we're working on a maintenance dredging permit because it's in our way.
We'd also like to do something every 5 years instead of every 20.
Yeah.
In terms of dredging, right? Yeah.
Okay.
And we specifically moved the Army Corps' storage site from north of the Topaz Groin to south of the Topaz Groin to get it further away from the canyon, to get it further away to from the dive site, to get it closer to an existing county work building. I don't know if you know, but on the beach, down in the Topaz area, there's a large county garage. Easy to get to if the county would fix the ramp at Avenue A. So the idea we had back then was we could store sand there, and it could be brought on shore with, a small pump, a trash pump, an 8-inch pipe, pumped down to the beach, moved into a dump truck, moved down the beach, and dumped in this site. So if we were to do a local project with a smaller dredge, not something you have to mobilize from the Gulf Coast,
Right.
you know, we could do local dredging in the harbor or from that storage site and be putting 10 or 20,000 cubic feet of sand every year,
Mhm.
good large grain stuff, you know, not be losing it into the canyon
Right.
and fight the battle a little bit at a time, I think for far less than $27 million.
Oh, it sounds like it. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to just jump in.
Something worth considering.
Yeah, so that kind of creative thinking can be incorporated into our regional plan that we are working with different jurisdictions and coming up with a long-term coastal resilience plan for the whole coast of LA County. So thank you for your creative ideas. And please talk to the city staff who represent the city and bring those ideas to us so that we can include it and think about it in the plan.
Thanks.
Anyone else?
No.
All right, motion to receive and file.
I'm gonna maybe get some public comment if
Oh,
there is
yeah,
any.
anybody from the public want to talk? Anybody on Zoom, e-comments?
Thank you. You can have a seat.
Mark Hansen, King Harbor voter. I just want to echo in the strongest possible terms Commissioner Carlson's last comments as he spoke. I saw Steph's face lighting up. Yeah, it is quite a disappointment for our voters after waiting for years and years and years to get the dredging done, that then, you know, they had to come back and do some small areas that they just didn't even really get close to doing. And just in the last week, I've sat down there very frustrated at low tide, looking at the stuff that just with the naked eye, I can see from the shoreline. So it really needs some help. And so I guess my comment is going very much to our guests behind me that, yeah, please listen to the commissioners and please see if there's any way of taking some of that sand out of the harbor. Thanks so much.
Anybody else? Anyone online?
No e-comments, no participants in Zoom.
Excellent. Now,
I have a question for Greg.
oh, sure.
How does the relationship work with the county and the city? Like, they were saying, oh, we can bring your samples. Like, it's not just the county comes in and just does it. What is the relationship, or how does that work?
So we have been having the stakeholder meetings, and City of Redondo Beach is our valuable partner in this project. So the city staff are constantly updated on the status of this project, and they are aware of what we are doing at all times. So whenever there's action that's needed by the city, we'll bring it up, and then city will question us. And I'm sure the city staff will update this commission, and you'll be able to be part of that action.
And to add to that, myself, the Public Works Director, and the city manager hold a monthly meeting with the representatives of LA County Beaches and Harbor specifically. Their director, their kind of staff liaison on their side. We talk about a plethora of projects, and this being one of them.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
Greg, in those conversations, do you have any of these, are our concerns unfounded based on your discussions?
They're new comments and concerns. I mean, we did know about the 2012 incident. That's come up in the conversations. But some of these other comments are fresh and from a different perspective from the using community.
These are all the written comments we gave on the dredging project. If you pull the dredging project's environmental impact report, you'll get stuff we wrote.
Okay, for your harbor?
Yes,
Or, okay,
yes, with all these concerns.
okay.
Sorry.
And then the reference to the Army Corps of Engineer doing dredging was interesting since we paid for ours ourselves, right?
Right.
Okay. Opportunity for next time.
Yeah, and that's because Marina del Rey main channel is federal navigation navigation channel.
Oh, okay.
So they have a responsibility to dredge that area.
Oh, and that's just at the mouth, not the basins. Okay, that makes sense.
Correct.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Any other comments, anybody? Now, motion to receive and file.
I'll make a motion to receive and file.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? No. Motion carries. It was received and filed. All right. We're going to hop back up again for those of you following along in your programs. Back up to public participation on non-agenda items. I need Greg for this.
He's in the sand, it's on the topaz, you know, and if they tested it, if they would go.
Should we wait for Greg for this?
The stuff that we dredged.
For which thing?
Back up on H. Sorry, J.
J1.
J1, yeah. So this is the discussion, consideration, and possible action on an exemption declaration and a conditional use permit to allow the operation of a commercial recreational businesses within an existing 1,491 square foot first floor office space located at 181, there it is, North Harbor Drive associated. I lost my, I was reading off the screen, there we go. 181 North Harbor Drive and associated marine related facilities inclusive of a maximum of 15 boat slips, docks, areas located in Basin 3 on property within the coastal commercial zone, CC3 zone, in the city's zoning ordinance for the coastal zone.
That was wordy.
Yeah.
No, thanks for everybody. This is a city-sponsored CUP. These operators down in Basin 3 have been operating down there for years, and we just recently found out without a CUP. They've always thought they were, complying with all the rules and regs. And because we had a helping hand in the fact that they were non-conforming, we decided to take a step forward and kind of just memorialize all of them. So we've got Stephen Jiang here from the Planning Division of our Community Development Department. He's going to walk you through the CUP, and then we'll field any questions that you guys might have.
All right, thank you guys. Good evening, my name is Stephen. I'll be presenting this item tonight. The project is comprised of a 1,491 square foot office space within an existing two-story commercial building built in 1986, located at 181 North Harbor Drive. It includes 15 boat slips / dock areas within Basin 3. The existing structure that houses the office includes a restaurant on the second floor, which is not a part of this current project scope, but the office use on the first floor is. The office space has historically been utilized for the administration of commercial recreational uses and has served as the designated business address for marina-related facilities and operations associated with 13 ancillary boat slips and 2 dock areas located within Basin 3. Basin 3 itself contains a total of 58 slips and 4 larger docks, which are owned by the city. However, 15 are used by commercial operators, and the building serves as the formal address for these business operations. This building is only used by the operators and city staff, not by the patrons themselves. Patrons typically will go straight to the slip or the dock for the specific business. This use has been operating in this manner basically since the construction of the building in the mid-'80s. It's important to note that currently there are 11 businesses that operate out of the 15 total slips. So that means that I think there was 3 businesses that have more than 1 slip that they use for their business. Additionally, no site improvements or structural changes are proposed as a part of this project. And lastly, the site in total, when you include all the parking areas for the pier and the Fisherman's Wharf, contains a total of 1,347 spaces. But per the Redondo Beach Municipal Code, when you look at the office use and the slip requirement, we only require a total of 16 parking spaces for everything combined. Here is a picture of the building, the office use in question. We have the restaurant on top and the office down below. Here's just a wide view of the office from a little farther out, and some of the slips are in question. The conditional use permit proposal is, like Greg said, to memorialize the legal non-conforming commercial recreational uses and the associated office and marine-related facility, which includes the office space and the 15 slips and dock areas within Basin 3. It's important to note that the commercial slips and dock areas specific to this conditional use permit are not tied to specific physical locations themselves within Basin 3. As time moves on, the slip locations may change depending on demand and need. The proposed project in this manner would allow for flexibility in assigning these slips and dock areas and permit individual businesses to manage multiple slips as long as the total number of slips for this approval does not exceed 15 total slips and dock areas. The review of a conditional use permit is contingent on meeting the findings for four main criteria. First, consistency with our land use plans. The proposed use must align with the general plan and coastal land use plan. In this case, the marina-related office and 15 slips in the existing CC3 building supports water-oriented recreation and is fully compliant with this finding. Second is site adequacy and access. Staff determines if the site can accommodate the use and handle its traffic load. Here, the building meets all setbacks, parking, loading, and landscaping requirements, and enjoys direct pedestrian-friendly access from Harbor Drive and Torrance Boulevard. Based on the findings, staff deems it that it meets the finding. Third is the analysis for adverse impacts on potential neighbors. Based on staff analysis, no new noise, traffic, parking, or operational impacts are anticipated beyond what already has existed here. Since there are no additional physical changes or alterations to the slips and docks or the building itself, this criterion is satisfied. And finally, protective conditions, setbacks, landscaping, ingress, egress controls, signage, noise limits, hours of operation have been reviewed, and additional conditions have been added to safeguard public health, safety, and welfare. The existing site features and ongoing city oversight provide the necessary protections for the site as we move forward. Staff recommends that the Harbor Commission approve the exemption declaration and grant the conditional use permit subject to the findings and conditions contained within the attached draft resolution. This concludes staff presentation. We're available for any questions you may have.
Start on this end if you want.
One quick question here. Should be easy to answer, hopefully. I'm a little confused as to what the scope of this permit is. So is this just covering the building? It's covering the building and the slips and the businesses in the slips?
So it's interesting. All the businesses operate out of the slips. All the patrons go directly to the slips. You can't obtain a business license for a business without a physical address. The slips don't have addresses. So for the most part, they base their address on the marina operator, which is located at 181 North Harbor. He collects their mail. They base their business in that building, but ultimately it's just an office space for our marina operator. But they've got to locate their business somewhere. It can't just float in the middle of nowhere. If that makes sense, you got to derive it from something.
Okay, and to follow on that, so the businesses that are renting slips, they are covered by the CUP as well. So it basically covers all 11 businesses plus the other.
Correct.
Okay.
And the idea here is, it's going to cover the 11 businesses and the 15 slips.
Mm-hmm.
As time goes on and businesses go out of businesses and new ones come in, we're not trying to assign each slip a specific number. It's fluid. We can move these things around just as long as it doesn't exceed 15.
All right, actually, one other more comment on the conditions. Item 7, the charter boat operation shall involve vessels operated by a professional captain. The term that's usually used, I believe, is licensed captain. We might want to consider changing that.
A good point. We can absolutely do that should the majority of you agree with that, but.
I'm just bringing it up now because it's U.S. Coast Guard licensed captain, a professional captain. I suppose there's some wiggle room in there with that one.
Sure.
I had a comment kind of along those lines. I was a little confused because at the beginning, I thought it was saying there's a need for two CUPs, one for the building and one for these operators. And so I was expecting to see two. And then I was struggling to define, why are we defining a percent? We're essentially saying that this building can only manage a percentage of slips for commercial operator use versus we want a certain percentage of commercial operators in this basin. Because there are other commercial operators, I guess the difference is those have a physical building like Paddle House.
Right, that's a separate one because they've got
And I
their own
don't know if
building.
there's others, but it just struck me as odd that, like, on one hand, I think we should say, like, the plan for this basin is to have X percent commercial operators versus we want to have X percent managed out of this one building, That's.
I see your take on it. The idea here was just to memorialize all the ones that were existing.
Yeah.
And then,
don't
if
have a
if an additional one came in, they would have to amend this CUP if they were opting to go into this specific office space. If they were locating within their own storefront, like Paddle House, they would go for their own CUP, not underneath this kind of umbrella one that we're providing on behalf of the slips that don't have a building. So we're just differentiating this because all of these slip
Yeah,
users.
but I thought when we were talking about this a couple of meetings ago, we were like, oh, we're going to have this one CUP for all operators. But the ones that have a storefront don't fall in.
Right, it's a little outside
So-
this purview, right?
Because I liked that idea of having one CUP for operators. So you have it all in one place.
We're not doing that. That's not how it's proposed.
That's not how it's
Yeah.
proposed, yeah. And then you just said if someone else wants to come in, we'd have to modify the CUP. So again, I would think you would want, and maybe this isn't how it works, you would want the CUP to not have to modify it. Like right now, you say you need 11 parking spaces for the slips because you have 11 operators. But if one operator that has two goes and then two new operators come in, ideally you wouldn't modify the CUP because you've planned for 15 parking spaces, or you've memorialized, 15 parking spaces for the slips versus like what we have today.
Yeah, it's not tied to the number of businesses, it's tied to the number of slips being used by businesses.
Yeah, but it says 11 instead of 15.
So 11 is the number of operators, but the parking
Right.
requirement is based on the number of slips itself. So the parking ratio is 0.5 spaces required per slip.
Oh,
So that's how the
it just
math.
happened to work out?
Yes, that's how the
Cool.
math works
Okay.
out for this, yeah.
Oh,
And then, and additionally, in the conditions of approval, number 12, the intention of that condition is to allow for the office and staff to manage some of the uses that are more like for like, so that it's administrative. However, number 12 gives the Harbor Commission and city staff the ability to require a CUP if the use is deemed a significant impact. So it does give the Harbor Commission and staff that ability to pull a business into a hearing if the city thinks that the proposed intensity is going to be more significant than what was intended for or replacing. Usually the city, when you're replacing uses, if the intensity is similar, we do not require additional CUPs beyond that. However, if the intensity is significant, then we will require additional CUPs.
Right. And then just the last comment I had on this was, and I don't know if it's just because this is how it is today, but just saying like, you can't work out of this building until 8:30 in the morning, till 5. I didn't know if that just unnecessarily tied us to limited hours versus, what if there's an operator that really needs something before 8:30, they're just out of luck? I don't know.
You're talking about the deliveries?
Oh, it just says you can't operate, the building cannot be open before 8:30.
I think, so the staff report talks about the hours of operation as the building as it stands, but the conditions of approval, I don't think include the hours.
Oh, it
And
was,
so it would give you the flexibility to operate the building as needed.
okay.
Additionally, the building is really administrative by nature. The slips can operate on their own time because they're not tied to the hours of operation to the building itself. So they're more tied to the hours of operation to the whole entire harbor, the individual slips.
Okay, thanks for pointing that the hours were not in the CUP. Thanks.
Yeah, I had the same question on the hours, but, so how busy is this building? It really isn't used all that much, this 1,500 square feet, right?
It's just an office for 4 people.
Okay, just opposite, okay. All right, and so, yeah, no, it's not, it looks fairly efficient, so you can swap companies in and out without a new CUP, right? Where they would just be grandfathered in under this, right?
Yeah, so if someone were to go out of business and someone were to replace them, they wouldn't need to come back, subject they didn't have any major issues with the conditions of approval as they're listed. But as soon as someone proposed to go above 16, we would have to bring that back to you for review. Because now
Okay.
we're exceeding the 15 that we're establishing.
Yeah. Okay. It looks good. I mean, it's notarizing what we're already doing, so.
Yeah, it's designed to be flexible and yet have some teeth if and when the intensity gets greater.
Okay. All right.
Thanks. I'm really glad you're doing it this way. You know, I'm really glad you're not making every single fishing boat go through a CUP process.
Thank you.
This makes a lot of sense. If a 16th boat does show up, what does amending the CUP look like? Is it, is there a parking study and you come to us and you come to council? So
Yeah.
it's 3 or 4 months?
To be honest, correct. And we say amend a CUP, it follows the same process as a new CUP. They write a letter, they say, this is what we want to do, these are the impacts. Someone like Steve would put together a parking study, figure out what the real impacts were, and we'd present the case to you.
And what's the typical cost to the operator?
What's the CUP cost these
The CUP cost is,
It was a couple thousand.
amendments, I think, are $1,600, and new CUPs are just north of $3,000.
Okay, yeah, that's what I saw on this one.
Yeah, and 3 to 4 months timeline typically for CUP processing.
Okay. So that's what Battle House is going to go through?
Yeah,
If or when, I mean, do they have a
I
permit?
believe they have a CUP. I didn't.
Okay.
Yeah,
I think they do too.
I think they do
So I
too.
think we're just catching the boats.
Yeah.
Why is it this marina office and not the existing sport fishing office that's on International Boardwalk?
Because that's only one of the operators,
Okay,
whereas this represents all of them.
okay,
If we were going to do a master one, this office made most sense.
okay.
So there's an operator that's not included in the 11?
No, they
Nothing.
have a storefront on International Boardwalk. And they operate, I don't know how many of the slips it is, but
But he's also included in the?
Yeah.
Oh. Yeah, it's just weird that. I don't know.
That
Simplify.
answer makes sense to me because, not everybody's going to, the sport fishing office is where you buy a ticket to go fishing.
Yeah.
It's not necessarily where you go for the
Right.
gondola more.
Oh, yeah, I agree with that.
What would drive a parking study or a traffic study or make this much more expensive? Because the Navigante is driving a lot of parking spots and the Gondola More is driving 1.
right.
I know there's the average is 0.5, but
Yeah,
that would be a big expense down the road.
Usually, from my understanding, is engineering will require a traffic study for any new use that they deem will exceed 110 trips a day. And so if a new use is coming in that's going to add 110 more car trips than what's already there, engineering will typically require a traffic study, and that's when it kind of gets expensive. For this project, I believe the parking surplus was massive, and the slips themselves, like I said earlier, the calculation for a new slip is not based entirely on what the business proposal is. The zoning code, for whatever reason, has the parking ratio at 0.5 per slip. It's just a flat 0.5 per slip. And so a new slip does come in. The conditional use permit, we would look at and see, we would require a traffic study engineering thinks that there's gonna be more than 110 cars per day. But if it's, I don't know, it's 10 extra cars a day, we're gonna sort of wrap that into what's already there in terms of vacant parking availability for the proposal.
So it sounds like it's really the traffic engineer, when the CUP gets applied for, tends to make a determination of which way this is going to go. Really
Yeah.
complex and expensive, or pretty straightforward.
Yeah. The only thing that worries me about traffic down the road is I sort of see two uses here. One use is like the boat rides where, hey, you're already at the pier, having a churro, let's go for a boat ride. The other use is the fishing boat where you show up at 7 a.m. and you're on the boat all day. Later in the day, you've got a big crowd with heavy gear coming in, wanting to do pickup and drop-offs. And we use the hoist area for that now. I worry in the future when the hoist goes away, we won't have that pickup and drop-off area. So that's the traffic study out in the distance I kind of worry about.
Sure.
And, you know, that'll get done during the boat ramp, I hope, or expect.
Absolutely, yeah.
The property line showed, there was a property line page on, I think on page 6, that showed, no, sorry, it was 6. That one. That showed the property line includes the basin area, the water area. And that's not what's shown on the zoning line. The zoning line doesn't have zoning for that area. The zoning line shows that International Boardwalk is CC1 and this office is CC3. Now there's not a lot of difference between those two zones. There's a little bit. Does that give us any issue with this CUP? I mean, what if the office moved? I'll cut to the chase.
Right.
What if we said, boy, we'd rather have more restaurant space there and let's combine this? What if Noble House bought this basin and that office went away?
We'd have to do a new CUP because the basis, the location of the CUP has been gone. So the
Okay.
CUP would essentially dissolve itself and we'd start over again.
Okay. Does the boats being in a CC1 and the office being in a CC3 give us any heartache?
Nah.
Okay. Let's see. Do these boats have to be kept in their slips all the time? If a slip had a problem and a boat had to be kept on a mooring while someday these docks get repaired, are we in violation of our business license?
No, I mean, we've got a little more power here in that our own property management runs this entire marina and makes sure that all the boats are within the slips themselves. Obviously, if there's extenuating circumstances and boats need to move, we can make temporary arrangements and it wouldn't fly in the face of the CUP.
My last concern is that I worry about the 15 being adequate. When number 16 shows up, and I can think of a lot of cases where that could happen.
Yeah.
If you say to number 16, it's, $1,500 in 3 months, that guy's not coming here. And I can think of a lot of scenarios where that happens. As we go around and we clean up the harbor, maybe we'll find another commercial boat that wants to come here. In the past, there's been issues or boats moving from Marina del Rey or San Pedro to here. Maybe the fishing gets good in the summertime. And the docks are under construction in Marina del Rey, and we pick up 1 or 2 more boats. Ignoring the fact that all the slips are full. Imagine a scenario where all the slips are not full. But, I can imagine a lot of scenarios where boat number 16 shows up, and as a resident or a harbor commissioner, I would kind of like boat number 16 to show up because I like the tax revenue, and I'd rather see a commercial boat that's taken care of instead of some of the abandoned boats that are down there or were down there. I know you've done a lot of work to clean it up, but that to me seems like a commercial basin, and I can see more happening there. There have been other fishing boats there. There used to be other boat rides there. There used to be, dive boats there in the summertime sometimes. So, there could be another use show up. Someday paddleboards could get hot again, or there could be, the Duffy could get popular and we could want a third Duffy. There's all kinds of toys in other harbors. There's little, electric paddle boats where you don't have to pedal, you just scoot around. They're really cool. They light up at night. They're marvelous looking. We could get almost anything. And I kind of hate capping us at 15 and making boat number 16. I hate saying no to boat number 16 when we're trying to grow the harbor.
Well, I'll tell you my thought process behind this was, let's make sure we legalize the guys who are already there, right?
Fair.
I'm also going through a boat launch project and a Seaside Lagoon renovation project, that both of which are changing the landscape of the parking situation. I would love to just do essentially the bare minimum right now in terms of claiming parking spots for both of those projects. Let those studies play out. Make sure we have enough parking for all uses in the next 2 to 3 years. And once we have that sorted out, if there is a wish, this is a city-sponsored CUP. I could easily come back with a city-sponsored amendment where we increase it from 15 to 30. But I definitely want to have the parking situation calibrated for both those two projects first. So I want to memorialize these ones now, figure out those two projects, get them entitled, figure out what parking supply remains, surplus, and then maybe address some extras. I want to give myself wiggle room.
I understand, and that makes sense. But, we certainly don't have a parking issue now. We're trying to get more people down there, especially year round.
Yeah.
And, if that 16th boat were to show up right now, even if it was free, even if you said, you know what, this is going to take a couple of, Harbor Commission meetings to cycle through, we'll approve it in September. It kills them, it sends them away.
Yeah.
Do you know how other harbors handle this?
Newport Beach doesn't require CUPs for this kind of activity, and that's not in their LCP. Ours is and is in our LCP. So, removing the conditional use permit requirement isn't as straightforward. It's not as simple as the planning department saying it's permissible by right now. We actually have to go in front of the Coastal Commission and kind of plead our case as well. So our system is not unique, but it's not all the same across the board, across all harbors. And this is kind of the hand that we've been dealt for right now in terms of how we have to process these kind of uses.
Thanks. Yeah, I understand the dilemma and what you're trying to do. I'd rather see it be a little more flexible and have the cap be, honestly, 16, 17, 20, until we have the boat ramp or the Seaside Lagoon, and then look at it again with a better parking study.
That said, once you approve a CUP with 16, 17, or 18, it stays with the land unless you come back for a formal amendment, which we could do, and you could bring it back down to 15. But if the businesses have located there, if 16, 17, and 18 showed up, they would then be grandfathered in, and we'd have a non-conforming situation that we created.
Yeah, understood. Thanks.
So it sounds like this is a contractual issue in that this could be covered. I have not seen what this CUP would look like if there's like a standard form for them, but could it be something where the CUP doesn't reference a number, but it references an exhibit to the CUP, whereby that exhibit would be much more easily changed. You wouldn't have to change the CUP if and when it comes time to add more boats. You would be able to just change an exhibit, and changing an exhibit is much easier than having to go through the whole CUP process, I'd imagine.
If the exhibit's attached to the CUP, it's a part of the CUP.
True, but if the I don't know if the CUP can then give authority by like similar to a statement of work, where it is a more fluid document, but the terms and conditions set forth in the CUP would stay concrete.
I don't think that would work because the required parking associated with each business use could change if it was going up. So the analysis surrounding the number of slips could increase the intensity of the use, thereby, making what you do tonight absolvent because, you're going from 15 to 16. So it's establishing the cap and allowing whatever that cap is, 17, 18, 15, and allowing the flexibility to go well below that, but certainly not above it, because now your review, your analysis
Sure.
is capped at that limit. So it's about landing on a maximum that you're comfortable with, right? And then making sure you just stay at or below that. That's the only way your analysis stays true.
I don't know, I mean, legally speaking, like thinking as like a, contractually, in my brain, it's working that there is a way to establish that X number of space, a boat requires X number of spaces. And in the statement of work, we have it where the number of boats then equal the equation that has been established for spaces in the CUP itself. But of course, I defer to you. If it can't be done, it can't be done.
Yeah.
Mr. Kazan?
Going back to the parking spaces, so in the analysis, it says the office space will require 5 parking spaces, and the ancillary slips and docks require an additional 11. So, but you said there's 15 slips, and they're 0.5 each, so.
0.75 each per slip.
0.75
Yes. So I think the
Okay.
math is
10.75
15
times
times
15.
0.75.
Okay. And then, since I've been on the commission, I don't think we've had a conversation about what we want this basin to be. What would our ideal makeup of percent commercial operators be out of that basin? Certainly, it's the commercial hub on the land. And we have just under 25%. Yeah, just under 25% now. And you threw out 16, 17, 18, 20. 20 would be 33% commercial operator.
But put another way, it's almost 100% of the big slips.
Yeah.
The remaining slips are much smaller ones.
Oh, yeah.
So that's something.
Yeah, that's a good point. One, two, three. Yeah, I didn't start off saying I'm glad we're putting something together finally, so great job on that. But yeah, I do worry about just pinning all the exactness of the current versus, like Roger was saying, expanding to at least one more, if not. Well, when I thought you said a half, I was like, well, just get 2 more slips because it's only 1 more space. And then we're saying we have a plethora of spaces, and I do understand that's going to get real tight when we do the boat harbor, but.
Honestly, it's
I don't think-
already tight on a Saturday afternoon.
But I don't think
I'm sorry to interrupt.
one parking space to add possibility seems worthwhile to me, but.
To go to 16.
Well, yeah.
If we can't change the CUP, can we change the amount of time it takes? Is there a way we can expedite them in the instance we want to change it?
So 3 to 4 months sounds like a long time. When you submit for a CUP application, state law says that the planning department has 30 days to respond. Every initial submittal has comments for missing information or additional information, or the traffic engineer determines that another study is required. So there's a supplemental submittal. They have another 30 days to review that. And then the public hearing process, we have to put out public hearing notices, get ready for this meeting. That's about a month, right? And we only meet once a month. 3 months happens real quick.
That's fair.
If I can go again, yeah, and that 3 months could be like that whole summer where that fishing boat or dive boat wants to come here.
It's a season.
To ask a question on a different side of a coin, another hard problem. Let's say we find a commercial boat in one of the other basins. Let's say if we discover a six-pack fishing boat or dive boat, they're going to have to come up with a physical address and go through a CUP process. I mean, is that the intention?
That's the intention. So they'll have to obtain a business license. They'll get their CUP. They'll probably use
The business
their
license is
marina.
pretty quick and cheap.
It is.
That's
but-
not too bad.
But you can't get it approved by the planning department if you don't have a CUP. So it'll
Okay.
remain a pending application until the CUP is approved.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the duration of cost of CUP is going to, I'm afraid, really drive people to stay underground, which is the current problem we have.
So we have I'll try to stay on topic, but we have another strat plan item that talks to creating certain rules and regulations around this topic in the municipal code penalty section that would allow our harbor patrol to issue fines to encourage people to come talk to people like Stephen in the planning department to get legal. That would encourage, now that's not been done yet, but it's a strat plan item that will happen this year. So that's the ultimate cure in terms of encouraging people to come in and follow the right process. But we're not there yet. This one, we manage this area. We could take better control of it. We have more influence.
Obviously, we can put this in place much more quickly than a bigger generic one, but was that the main reason that we're not coming up with one that's just for the harbor, any commercial operator in the harbor? Or was it because we just wanted one for Basin 3? Like, what was the negative to making
The negative is we have no idea
For the
how many of
harbor.
them aren't there. We know Basin 3 because we manage and operate this one. We know exactly how
putting
many.
a number? Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
The other ones are illegal, and we know about them because you see them, but there might be more, there might be less. Until you start doing the inspections and encouraging people through fines to become legal, you don't really know.
Okay, and I like your comment about the changing number 7. Captain.
Yeah.
Anybody on the public?
Mark Hanson, King Harbor boater. I rise in support of staff's recommendation for this evening. I went through all the docs pretty carefully, kind of looking for problems. And the two that I imagined going in was, wow, that's a pretty unusual thing to take 11 businesses and put them under one CUP. And would probably not do that anywhere else I can imagine. So I carefully went, and of course I'm familiar with all those businesses. I walk it all the time, but I wanted to go in and really look at the drawing again and kind of remind myself what they each do. And I became very comfortable that they're all commercial boat operators, often supporting recreational boating. So they are consistent as heck. And my guess is, not speaking for staff is, but if there'd been one business in there that wasn't consistent, I bet you wouldn't see them in their drawing. I think it would go against their natural instincts. But because they're so similar, I'm confident in that and comfortable with that. Second part was the flexibility in being able to move those 11 businesses, 15 around. Again, that's something we'd probably never do anywhere else in the city. It'd be unfair for neighbors and neighboring businesses that all of a sudden, what they used to be, a few hundred feet from one business and suddenly there's another business, okay? We probably wouldn't do that anywhere else. But again, very related to the fact that they're such similar businesses, it was hard for me to imagine a scenario where anybody reasonably close to them, which is mostly the international boardwalk businesses, are going to really care if they move around. And I'll somewhat humorously mention that the international boardwalk businesses are not shy people. If it just so happened that we moved a boat that makes a little more fumes or a little bit noise, we're going to hear about it really quickly, and it's not a hard thing to fix. So I had two concerns. I've made myself comfortable with both, so I rise in favor of staff's recommendation. Thanks.
Is there anybody on
No
Zoom?
e-comments and no participants in Zoom.
Excellent. Anybody else, anything else to say? I believe we have to receive and file these documents.
No, this is a motion to approve.
Motion to approve.
I'd like to make two motions if I
sure.
can. First motion, I'd like to move that we change the wording professional captain to not just licensed captain, but U.S. Coast Guard licensed captain.
Point of order, don't we need to close the public hearing
Oh, I'm
first?
sorry, yes.
I believe we did, but that's okay. Any more for the public comments?
Okay, close the public hearing, take a vote.
Yeah, so.
Yeah,
that's
so
it.
motion to close the public hearing.
Yes.
Second.
Thank you. Lee. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, excellent.
Okay, so now I move that we change the wording professional captain to U.S. Coast Guard licensed captain.
Second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. And your second?
The second motion, I may not win on this one, but I would like us to have the flexibility of adding one or two more boats. There was a time back in 2001 or 2002 where the fishing was good, and a long-range fishing boat called the Legend showed up here, and I got to go fishing out of King Harbor for albacore instead of driving down to San Diego. And it was marvelous, and I jumped on that boat 2 or 3 times, and I had a 15-minute ride home instead of a 100-mile ride home. It was really cool. There was another summer where a dive boat, the Pacific Star, showed up in King Harbor, and I could dive out of here and go to Santa Barbara Island instead of having to, drive down to Long Beach. And I dove out of here more, and I spent more money, and more people got to see the harbor, and it was really cool. So I really wish we had the flexibility to pick up, another boat or two, a professional operator, screened by Craig. I don't know how to do that. I respect what you're trying to do. I respect that this is unusual. I respect that everyone new moving in needs a CUP. But I can envision scenarios where a good operator we would like to have here wants to be here potentially just temporarily. And that summer season maybe that he wants to be here, is shorter than the whole process of approving them.
Well, it's absolutely your purview to decide if 15 is the right number or not. I'm trying to methodically take our parking spaces for all these dedicated uses. I just don't want to overcommit.
I appreciate that, which is, why I may not win here, but I'm throwing it open to a vote. And I could see something like, putting one of the boats in this row is the bait boat. If you had something come up, you could put it on a mooring and, move another commercial boat that takes passengers into this row.
So I'll just say my concern with that is that this is 15 boat slips, not boats. So you say one fishing boat, and I totally see your point, and I'm totally fine with that. But also, what if the water gets warm and someone wants to put 10 jet skis into one of those slips? That's a whole different impact if you're talking that many more boats coming in and out of that area. I don't mind if we were saying one more big fishing boat, but when we're saying one slip and we're giving up any further comment on what can be in that slip, because that's not part of this, right?
It's kind of opened out all the uses, yeah.
Are we in that
Boats.
situation now where one of these 15 boats could turn into, 10 jet skis or 10 paddle boats?
I mean, it could, again, in this location, we have a lot of control because we're also the property manager, so we can just say no if we don't like the use. But if that control wasn't there, her statement would be correct.
Okay.
But given that we have that control, does it make sense to just put a little margin into this? Even if it's only 0.75 parking spaces per slip. In other words, take this from 15 to 16.
I need every single spot.
So I think Greg is on our side,
Mhm.
and I think he's being cautious. I think that if 16 were if he came to us with 16, we'd be fighting for 17. If he came for 17, we'd be fighting for 18. So I get the sentiment that we're always gonna want one more. I get it, because we're never gonna wanna push businesses away.
I think it's just one more than what we have now, not the
Okay, then we have.
opportunity, an
Sure,
opportunity.
so is a buffer of one, and like significant enough to outweigh the risk that Greg evidently sees is there? I'm
Yeah,
risk
and
averse.
in the latter part of this meeting, we haven't seen the February 15th parking study for the boat ramp. It's reading the smile there.
It's ready. So I'll get into the liaison report, but yeah.
I mean, none of us have like this crystal ball that we know that another boat's gonna show up. In the event that one does, and we don't have a parking space for it, and if they go through this whole CUP process and that drives them away, that's a problem. I think the bigger problem is if we have them and we make it 16, a 16th boat shows up, and then we go through all of this work that we're doing down there, and now we're out of the parking space. As I think, again, I think if Greg thought we could do 16, I imagine if he thought we could do 16, we would do 16.
I'm being cautious, I am, but
I know we're kind of past the part of discussion, but let me ask another question which has to do with this margin. If one of those operators went out of business today or changed, if the glass bottom boat guy went away, does his replacement have to come before us and get a CUP? Okay, good. Because otherwise, when one went out of business, then we'd be at 14, then 13, then 12, then we'd have no boats. Okay, great, thank you. Well, I appreciate your concerns, but as someone who's ridden so many of the boats down there and seen them come and go and have turnover, I'm gonna ask for one margin. So, but
Sure.
That's why we vote.
Sure.
So,
I will say, we wouldn't be able to just grant this tonight. The analysis is changing. Potentially, we would have to go back to the traffic engineer and talk about the need for a traffic analysis. Right now, we're solidifying the existing situation.
What is the
But
cost?
even though the analysis says, oh, we have all these spaces?
Yes,
You're talking about parking, I'm talking about traffic.
What is the cost to do that?
Any idea what a traffic analysis costs?
Traffic reports, I've seen range as cheap as $10,000 up to $25,000. Depending on, it depends on what I think the prohibitive cost is someone has to go there and sit there and count the traffic and then imagine what the use is gonna be. And so without even a proposal, it's gonna be difficult for a company to determine. So they're gonna probably end up thinking of like a wide range of
So on the
future
low
proposed
end, it's
businesses.
10,000. I won't hold you to it, but on the low end, it's 10,000. How long would it take for us to earn 10,000 off that extra?
Oh. Probably 8 months.
Why
Is
do we,
that-
we're just reallocating an existing slip. It's not like it's a new slip. So why is there's
we
not
should-
new traffic? It's just this, maybe one day this slip becomes commercial and right now it's
So
not.
we need to differentiate the difference between a parking study and a traffic analysis. Parking requirements are based in the municipal code, 0.75 per slip, do the math, figure
Yeah.
out what your supply is. Traffic analysis is what is this business driving in terms of people actually populating the area,
Okay, so private
right?
slip owner looks different in the traffic study than a commercial operator.
Yeah, it's going to be based on use, and then the traffic analysis is typically tied to the environmental analysis for a project, so it's really all tied to CEQA. And so the report itself tells you, all right, there's X business coming in, there's this many traffic trips, Based on the analysis, we think it's going to be a significant impact or it's not a significant impact. And that's going to drive the decision of staff and how the commission moves forward
And-
based on that report.
And I'll go out on a limb and say that the city's traffic engineer probably didn't require a traffic analysis in this case because we were solidifying and memorializing the existing businesses that have been here for years and years and years. As soon as we start saying we want to allocate recreational slips into commercial slips, the analysis changes.
Because we've never had more than 15.
I'm sure we have.
I'm sure we have at some point, but right now we have 15.
Just these 15. There are more than 15.
In-
This covers all commercial use in that. No, right.
Covers anybody that has like a captain's license and invites people onto their boats, or people that actually offer vessels like pedal boats to patrons. But if you're just a fisherman and patrons aren't included in anything, that's your commercial business, that's different, that's not a part of this.
Got it.
Think about it, if a customer gets on the boat, this would cover that.
Right. Got it.
So for example, at one point in the past, there were Chevron oil spill response boats here, which don't take a lot of parking or traffic. And now there's the El Rey, a whale watch boat that takes, 30 people.
Right.
If that happens in the future, that's
just significant
not
change.
going to happen.
Right, without coming back.
That's not going to happen.
Right. So my advice would be, let's approve the 15. Let's let the boat launch and Seaside Lagoon projects further materialize. I can monitor the interest level on said 16th, 17th, and 18th slip in the next few months. And I can always come back with another city-initiated amendment to increase it when we have more information. But let's memorialize the operators that are there right now.
Yeah, if he comes back to us in a couple months and says, like, if we do 16 today, and he comes back, then we have to go and pay for this traffic study. And then he comes back to us in 3 months and says, well, I can actually do 19, but now we have to do a whole nother traffic study. And now that's another 10 or 15 or 20 grand, all for a couple of months potentially.
And I know that's kind of
pricey.
phasing it, but
I completely understand and I agree with what we're doing. But I imagine, if we were to, it's like I'll call it snapping a chalk line. We're drawing a line in the sand, we're making this rule. If we happen to have been doing this 3 or 4 years ago when the Chevron boats were there, I'd rather have the El Rey there than the Chevron boats. That wouldn't happen with these new rules. A new guy coming in with a boat like the El Rey wouldn't want to take the 3 or 4 months and spend the money on the CUP. He'd be in San Pedro.
right.
So I realize what we're doing, but I worry about the extra regulation we're putting on an area that we're trying to grow economically.
And get more people on the water.
You can always direct me too. You could approve this as is and direct me that when more information is available in terms of studies and in terms of interest level out there, that you come back, Greg, and we find something more than 15, whatever the magic number is.
Yeah, I
We're
wouldn't.
not getting the 16 tonight.
No.
So either way, we either vote for the 15 or we're just not voting.
I'm going to vote for the 15, and what I'd like to study is, instead of, do we need 16 or not, is how do we approve the next guy without it being thousands of dollars in 3 or 4 months?
Yeah, so
Well,
I'd like to
that's
add-
hard, the UP process.
exactly. So the CUP process is inherently onerous. It's
Yeah.
not just the harbor, it's citywide. We have
Yeah.
complaints about the CUP process from the land use inland side of everything too.
Certainly.
I know that my director, Mark, for community development, is looking into ways to change the CUP process. One of the easy things that you can change as a part of amendment, which would require a city council vote, is to change what requires a CUP to be reviewed by the Harbor Commission in the first place. And so, for example, some of the uses that we have in like gymnastics requires a CUP in the city of Redondo Beach. And we're not entirely sure why it needs one, but we're forced to take it because the zoning code requires us to. And so these are some methods you could also consider as a commission of things to look for, or take to Greg to bring forward as a strategy and move forward with that. Or even, I know that our director is considering the fees and how that becomes a barrier to development, or if they need to be changed in that way too. But these are all things that are typically, that will require to go to the city council, because these are drastic changes.
Yeah, the Community Development Department did essentially a self-assessment less than 6 months ago. And they're systematically kind of working through that. I mean, it's improving processes like that, updating zoning codes. It's internal staff related as well. Trying to make things just easier for the customer, for the citizen that's trying to open up a business. It's going to take time, but we're en route.
In this case, the city's paying for the CUP, not
Correct.
the 11, right? So if we, or 15, 11. Okay.
I mean, I'm hearing the message loud and clear. If we can get more, let's get more.
I wouldn't put it as, if we can get more, let's get more. But, you know, if a business shows up or an existing business wants to expand, let's find a way to say yes to that quickly and affordably and make, you know, an existing business's new boat pencil out.
Exhaust all options.
Would an existing business need one? If they're already existing?
If we change 15 to 16, then we'll have a spare, and that operator wouldn't have to pay.
But you raise a fair point. Then I'll ask for 17. So.
But to your point, there's a limit based on the size.
There is, yeah. But, you know, if the Duffy business turned out to be really popular, and, you know, it's not 10 jet skis, you can tell me a Duffy's a problem, certainly. But, you know, if we wanted a third Duffy down there, it's a no right now. All right, so I'm not going to make a second motion.
Okay.
Well, I guess.
Well, you can still make one to
Still make
approve.
a motion, yeah.
Someone has to make a motion to approve.
We need to make a motion to approve after the first motion, which added license captain.
Correct.
Okay, so.
You could also make the motion to approve and then direct Greg to every month or as information comes available. If we could get ahead of that 16th boat, that could help.
It's not the 16th boat that concerns me as much as the time and cost of the CUP.
Well, that's.
Because we're going to hit this in other basins, and,
Sure.
you know, I would like to have good operators throughout the harbor who are
That exceeds
doing
the
what we
purview
need
of
and
this
paying our
commission.
fees. And it's kind of a separate problem from whether we have 16 or 17 slips here. And I recognize what you may do with the harbor master, but it's still kind of a different problem. You know, what are we going to tell Dive and Surf about their boat?
I mean, it's a tough problem because when the next boat shows up, depending on what their business model is, that's
The
gonna
next
affect the
boat's already
traffic.
here, we just don't know about it.
Oh, yeah, okay.
And is that guy going to stay underground? Or is he going to?
I'll just to clarify, this is only Basin 3 we're talking about tonight.
I understand, but I'm worried about other basins as well, because I think this problem expands.
Oh, yeah,
So,
it's in every basin.
so I think we need a motion, I'm sorry. I think we need a motion to,
Approve the 15, and then I would also say to direct Greg to let us know as information comes ready. We can't change the CUP process, so let's just forget about that.
I agree, but I'm actually not going to make the second half of it
Okay.
because I don't know how to word that and ask you for the solution that I can't imagine.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, I don't know if you need to direct me. I've heard tonight that I should be working on this, and when I think we're ready, I will.
Yeah, it's the oceanside version of what we're already doing on land.
Right.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Then just do the first part of it.
So I'll make a motion to approve the
Exemption.
Yeah,
The CUP as it is,
As proposed or
as proposed.
as recommended?
as recommended.
As second. I'll second it.
With amendments.
And the exemption declaration.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. That was a fun one.
Yeah. I'm sorry, thanks for your patience with me. I was trying to remember the phrasing on the last page.
It's definitely a sticky issue. I mean,
That
it's,
was a fun one. Okay, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, we're on section K now.
No, they
Nothing.
did that already.
No items continue from previous agendas. We already did L. Items from staff, liaisons report.
Yeah, I've got a liaison report for you. I'm gonna try to keep it brief, but give you all the pertinent information. We alluded to it already. The boat launch project is well underway. We've got all the studies that were submitted to staff back in February. We did a few rounds of back and forth for some edits. We're at a point right now where we are going to be calling the subcommittee together to, one, go over those studies, but two, while we were kind of making edits to the studies, the results didn't change between the edits. It was just, fine print type stuff. They were working on putting together some options for where exactly the boat launch could locate on Mole D while adhering to all the study's results. So we're going to go through those options with the subcommittee as well. So it'll be your first sneak peek at what could be. I know Catherine's already reached out to a couple of you to kind of organize that. And as soon as we have that feedback, then the community outreach process starts, because we actually have options in hand that we can start showing people, which is great. The marina parking lot, this project is well on its way. It's gotten all the ADA upgrades. We've got new ADA stalls, we've got new slope, we've got a new path of travel, all the pay stations are in, the pay by app is up. The only two things remaining is the demo of the actual booth itself, which I think is happening this week, next week. And once that happens, we're completely done with the project. And right now we are charging for parking at this point. A little mixed reaction last Saturday in terms of how it went. We're convening this week to kind of go over some lessons learned in terms of what we can do in terms of improved signage. Advertising the pay by app option. It seemed like there was a lot of people waiting in line at the pay station itself, which I didn't expect. I thought more people would use the pay by app. So maybe it was because they didn't see it. Anyway, we're gonna do a lessons learned and keep massaging this a little bit. The International Boardwalk blade signs, those are installed. That project is considered complete. I think they look fantastic. At this point, when there's changeover, the new tenant will be responsible for upgrading the sign. It's really just a slide out. So they'll just, do their slide out and push it back in. So it's pretty easily customizable. The break wall repair, I don't really have an update on this one. Obviously, the Army Corps is planning to fix our break wall or to help out with that. We did hear that there was a small delay in their efforts to procure or award the contract to a contractor, but we haven't heard an official word that that's delayed the project in any way. So we know that selection process was delayed, but everything we've heard is that they still plan to start in July. We'll find out. We'll keep our ear to the grindstone and see what we can find out on that one. The sea bass grow pens, we did get Coastal Commission approval of our CDP permit. Fabrication has started off-site and the building permit process has begun. We couldn't start the building permit process until we got the CDP permit in hand from Coastal Commission. We're still hoping for end of July. We've been on track the whole time, which is great. The big issue there was that CDP permit. The timing was out of our control, but we got it. So fantastic news. Seaside Lagoon, just like the boat launch, we do expect to convene with the subcommittee. This one's not late June, but probably early July. What we've finished is a completed phase 1 environmental assessment, which is a way to talk about like an environmental overview that helps you identify where you need to dig down further into. It does soils reports, it does arbor report. It's kind of just a general study that then indicates where we need to actually show some more emphasis on. Parking analysis is done. Recently, we've been meeting with LA County Department of Health, as well as the State Water Board Agency. We've been meeting with them in April and May, kind of revising our plans and specs to concede to some of their comments. We just got word that they're pretty much in agreement with our option. So I'm going to bring the subcommittee on board to go over all the studies, talk about next steps, look at any of the design modifications that resulted in some of these outside agency comments. So that's coming real soon as well. So these subcommittees are going to be busy. Leslie and Roger, I'm looking at you because I think you're on both of those. And that's it for me. We do have a meeting scheduled for July 14th. We'll be having our representatives from the fire department and the police department coming to do just an update on all things public safety down at the waterfront, answer any of your questions, go through some stats if they have them. So if you don't plan to attend, let me know now because we do plan to have something. And with that, I can hang out for some questions that you may have.
Going back to the parking lot,
Yeah,
do we still have the car show? Or did
we
that?
do.
Okay,
We do.
cool. And then with the new parking, do we have parking for employees or any of the other Measure C clauses on parking? Is that coming?
We do. So we're going through each of the employers for their employee parking. We didn't have the bandwidth to allow each employee to contact us separately each month. So each specific business is going to be ordering a certain amount each month for their employees, so they'll be covered. Same with our slip renters. They all get one of those parking passes. You brought up the car show. If you are bringing a car that's in the show, you'll get a temporary pass that allows you to be there, but any customer coming to see the car show would have to pay for parking. For the Measure C stuff, we are allowing the employee pass to be purchased by seasonal recreational users, which is a discounted rate. It's $25 a month. And that way they can pick and choose what months they plan to use. If they don't use it in the winter, they just can choose not to purchase the pass. But in July, if they know they're going to be out for a while because they took some time off from work or something, they can just buy it that one time.
Cool. And trailers? Boat trailers? Okay.
Absolutely.
I mean, do they pay for one or two spots now?
Just one.
Okay,
Yeah.
cool. Thank you.
And nothing from me.
So the breakwater pro, I was searching for the RFP, I couldn't find it. So it did come out and they're in the down select?
No, that's the delay. They haven't
It hasn't
awarded
even
it.
come out,
Yeah.
okay, I didn't
Yeah.
see it.
And it's hit or miss. We're looking at websites like you are, and we're not getting all the information, and we didn't get a formal announcement. We just know that portion was delayed. So in my head, the
Yeah.
project got delayed, but it's not showing up that way.
Okay. And when that stakeholder meeting is held, will that, I assume, also include the Recreation and Parks Department?
For the break wall?
Yeah, for the impact that they're occupying all those parking spaces in Moonstone Park and my other thing, we still don't have any bike racks north of Portofino Way. That would be even more important when all those
can-
spots go away.
I can invite someone from community services.
That'd be great. All right, yeah, I'm glad the fire department, police department are gonna come back next month. I'm gonna be out of town, so I'm gonna miss that.
Okay. I will say to your bike rack comment, I just purchased 4 bike racks at the California Surf Club, 4 in front of the R10 facility, and we're looking at purchasing another 12 to be spread out on Mole D, and potentially, if I have it in my budget, another few for that plaza area above Paddle House, that brick kind of area. Obviously, that's city-controlled area, and everything north of Portofino is master leasehold. I'll continue to work towards getting it north, but we're trying to install bike racks where we can.
How about by the skate park?
I don't think there's any over there right now, right?
There's some kind of in front of Fun Factory, but it's a pretty small group and pretty far from the
That's
skate
right, there
park.
are some right there, yeah.
Yeah, I
It's-
think you still need one at Moonstone Park for people that are going to the park or going to the end and watching the sunset.
It's tough. We could talk offline, but I get it. Location of these bike racks matters, especially with these expensive e-bikes. You don't want to just lock your bike up, walk away, and it's not visible. And yet there's no bikes allowed on International Boardwalk. So are you encouraging them to go there if you put them there? I don't know. It's kind of a chicken and the egg thing, I guess. But if they get used, why not, right?
There's no bike riding
It saves parking.
allowed. You can have a bike, there's no bike riding. Is that correct?
Correct. You get to
So you
walk
could
it.
walk, you could have biked all day long and then walked your bike up. So
Could do that.
that's a loophole.
I have nothing.
So I just wanted to check. I thought I heard you say, and maybe I misheard, that the way to get rid of the whole conditional use permit thing is to change the coastal plan, local coastal
And
plan,
the municipal code. You'd have to do both.
and municipal code. Okay.
So it's not a quick fix.
Okay, thank you.
I don't have anything else. So moving along, nothing for commission member. Are there any commission member items in future commission agenda topics? You want to talk about in the future? Oh, all right.
Anyone else not going to be here next month?
I'm gonna
Quorum?
check. I'm not sure. I don't know that I'm gonna be able to make it.
Okay, just,
Unfortunately.
Leslie, if you could send me an email just to make it official, and then Tom, just email me when you know.
Anybody like to go home? Is there a motion to adjourn?
I thought we were gonna go a marathon meeting.
Make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye. That was a quick second by Lisa.